In March 1943, Grand Admiral Donitz's U-boats strike hard, sinking 108 Allied ships in a single month. Allied leaders grow desperate, and some fear Germany is close to winning the Battle of the Atlantic. If the Allies lose control of these waters, Britain could lose its lifeline, and perhaps the entire war. Yet by May 1943, it will be the U-boats themselves limping home in defeat. How in just 2 months did the hunters become the hunted? Since 1939, German U-boats have menaced Allied shipping lanes. While German surface raiders play a limited role, Admiral Karl Dönitz envisions his submarines waging a tonnage war against Britain's merchant fleet, sinking enough cargo ships to cripple Britain's military power or force it into surrender. Initially, the Germans find success. Dönitz calls the summer of 1940 the happy time, when U-boats easily target unescorted merchantmen, sinking 471 ships. When the United States enters the war in 1942, losses rise to 1,060, a period the U-boat crews call the second happy time, or American shooting season. For Prime Minister Winston Churchill, the Atlantic is the decisive front upon which all others depend, and by late 1942, it remains one of the few theaters where Germany holds the upper hand. In November 1942, U-boats alone destroy 768,000 gross tons of Allied shipping, their wartime peak. Churchill, alarmed, requests greater aid from his allies and even redefines how the enemy is described. Enemy submarines are to be called U-boats. The term submarine is reserved for Allied vessels. U-boats are those dastardly villains who sink our ships, while submarines are the gallant craft that sink theirs. Gannon. At the Casablanca Conference in January 1943, American leaders agree to prioritize the Atlantic campaign, postponing the invasion of France and Germany until 1944. Some commanders reluctantly accept, but most agree Britain cannot serve as an invasion base while the U-boat threat persists. Even with increased U.S. support, serious challenges remain. The Allied war effort faces shortages and internal competition for limited resources, while Dönitz commands more submarines than ever before. In 1939, he had only 39. By early 1943, around 300 patrol the seas, with more under construction. When Grand Admiral Erich Raeder resigns as Commander-in-Chief of the Navy in January 1943, Hitler promotes Dönitz to replace him, ordering him to maintain pressure in the Atlantic. Dönitz, however, acknowledges the grim reality in a radio address. The harsh realities of the submarine war mean even more difficult times lie ahead. Van der Vaart, 289, with a submariner now leading the German Navy, the Allies expect the U-boat menace to intensify. One major concern is the mid-Atlantic air gap, a stretch of ocean beyond the range of Allied aircraft, known to sailors as Torpedo Junction. By 1943, the rapid growth of the Royal Canadian Navy allows almost full escort coverage, but too few ships and aircraft still leave convoys exposed. Airbases in Britain, Iceland, Canada, and the U.S. have expanded patrol zones, yet a 1,000-kilometer gap still remains off Cape Farewell. Allied planners seek to close it with escort carriers, including converted merchant ships or very long-range bombers like the B-24 Liberator. But until January 1943, British Coastal Command possesses only 6 VLR Liberators, most diverted to the bomber campaign over Germany or the Pacific Theater. Meanwhile, in December 1941, the German Navy's Beobachtungsdienst intelligence branch breaks the British naval cipher number 3, enabling coordinated wolf-pack attacks. Using intercepted messages, U-boats locate nearly 70% of Allied convoys. At the same time, Allied strength is stretched thin by Operation Torch in North Africa and the Tunisian campaign of early 1943. The Royal Navy redirects 125 destroyers and escorts to support Torch, while fuel demands in Africa leave fewer reserves for Atlantic convoys to outmaneuver the submarines. The result is a surge in losses. In March 1943 alone, German U-boats and surface raiders sink 120 Allied ships worldwide, 704,000 tons in total, with 484,000 lost in the Atlantic. This 74% rise over the previous month is seen as a major crisis. A British memorandum from March warns, There is insufficient shipping to allow us to develop the offensives against the enemy. Every ship sunk makes the situation worse. We can no longer rely on evading U-boat packs and must fight our convoys through them, Haslop 210. Later Allied report in December 1943 even suggests that defeat in the Atlantic and the entire war was briefly possible. Yet newer studies challenge this idea. The supposed March crisis largely centers on 2 convoys that suffer heavy losses. 22 of 90 ships sunk. Overall, only 31% of March convoys are attacked, compared to 52% in November 1942. In fact, during early 1943, overall sinkings fall below any quarter of 1942. The Allies are also constructing ships faster than they are lost, achieving a net gain of 2 million tons by March. Most importantly, German records reveal no belief in an impending victory that spring. Within 2 months, the U-boats are forced to retreat from the Atlantic, decisively beaten. Amid the fierce March battles, the Allies convened the Atlantic Convoy Conference to unify strategy and improve coordination. Their main goal, close the mid-Atlantic air gap and shift the fight to the enemy. The commander-in-chief of the Western approaches voices optimism. I really have hopes now that we can turn from the defensive to another and better role, killing them. Redford, 74. Early 1943. Brings together numerous tactical, technical, and operational advances. Ultra-intelligence, derived from the cracked Enigma code, is the most famous Allied advantage, but it is far from the only or even the most decisive tool. Ultra provides general locations of most U-boats are now being closely tracked by the men and women of London's submarine tracking room. Allied convoys are rerouted around their positions, a tactic that proves highly effective. Yet ultra-intelligence has its limits. Decrypting German messages can take up to 72 hours. And there are long blackout periods whenever the Germans change their Enigma settings, as they did for most of 1942. As more U-boats take to the seas, avoiding them becomes increasingly difficult. Ultra remains an essential strategic tool, but cannot precisely locate U-boats poised to strike. That's where other technology takes over. By early 1943, more Allied escorts carry advanced sonar and radar systems. The underwater ASDIC sonar detects submerged submarines, estimating both range and bearing. It not only exposes approaching U-boats, but also guides more accurate deployment of anti-submarine weapons, such as the Hedgehog and depth charges. Meanwhile, ships and aircraft using the new 10-centimeter radar can spot surfaced submarines even at night or in poor weather. None of these systems are flawless, but when used together, they form an almost impenetrable shield. The first sign of a U-boat attack would come from the ASDIC operators who'd pick up a contact. You could hear these pings, and the space between the ping and the pong told how far the submarine was. When they thought they were right above it, the command came, "Fire!" Then the depth charges went off. A massive column of water rose. It was like lightning streaking across the sea. In daylight, it was a fantastic sight. Bailey, 6768. German submariner Anton Staller aboard U-188 experiences such an attack in March 1943. Alarm bells blared. Destroyer on the starboard bow? Range about 5,000 meters. A quick look at the manometer showed 100 meters depth, just as I heard the thunder of exploding depth charges ahead. I now realized how terrifyingly loud they were underwater. Though terrified, I strained to listen through the hydrophone, wondering if I'd ever hear again. Willman, 49. Another crucial Allied breakthrough is high-frequency direction finding, HFDF or Huff-Duff. It can detect German radio transmissions up to 25 kilometers away, close enough to pursue and engage. Far outranging surface radar, it allows escorts to act offensively rather than reactively. The system existed since 1942, but becomes widespread in 1943, with at least 2 HFDF-equipped ships guarding every convoy. Alongside this, new anti-submarine weapons and improved organization bolster defense. Where 6 escorts once protected 24 merchantmen, civilian scientists led by Professor P.M.S. Blackett discover that 8 escorts can safely cover 48 ships. This shift enables smaller convoys to merge into larger ones and releases surplus escorts to form mobile support groups ready to reinforce any threatened convoy. Finally, the Allies gained more very long-range bombers and escort carriers. By May, Coastal Command fields 49 VLR aircraft, up from just 17 in February. Though far fewer than the hundreds of bombers striking Germany itself, they are sufficient to close the notorious air gap. Aircraft such as the B-24 Liberator, the Whitley, and the Sunderland and Catalina flying boats become deadly submarine hunters, soon responsible for nearly half of all U-boat losses. The combined effect of these technologies and tactics is devastating for the U-boat arm. By April, the struggle begins to turn. The Allies lose 39 merchantmen but destroy 15 submarines. May 1943 proves decisive, marked by the Battle of Convoy SC-130. Departing Halifax, Nova Scotia for Liverpool, the convoy comprises 37 merchant ships escorted by 8 warships, several fitted with HFDF and 10-centimeter radar. German intelligence identifies the convoy and assembles up to 25 U-boats in 3 wolf packs for the assault. Donau 1 and 2 approach from the southeast while Wolfpack Iller lies ahead. The plan is to ambush the convoy within the mid-Atlantic air gap, but British Ultra intercepts reveal the plot. Unfortunately, a transmission failure prevents the escort commander from receiving the warning. Even so, when the attack begins on May 18th, the escorts conduct aggressive sweeps that disrupt the submarines, while the convoy executes evasive turns. Soon, the battle drifts within range of Allied aircraft, which relentlessly pursue the U-boats and drive them underwater. By May 21st, U-boat command abandons the assault. The Allies destroy 3 submarines and damage another without losing a single ship. Aboard one of the sunken vessels, U-954, lies Admiral Dönitz's youngest son, Paul, who perishes with his crew. The Battle of SC-130 marks the high point of Allied anti-submarine warfare. It was a disastrous month for the Kriegsmarine. 41 U-boats lost, nearly a quarter of all in operation. Kapitän Lieutenant Peter Erich Kremer, stationed at U-boat staff headquarters, later remembered, "By May, things were completely out of control. I soon learned that losses had climbed to over 1 boat per day. Everyone was calling it Black May." Gannon. On May 24th, Dönitz ordered all submarines to retreat from the Atlantic until improved equipment and tactics could be developed. But how had the U-boats fallen so swiftly from dominance? Allied progress was one cause, yet German flaws also played a role. First, their intelligence was poor. They underestimated Allied high-frequency direction finding, radar, and the decoding of Enigma. Submariners didn't understand how to evade or counter them. Second, Dönitz's centralized command required frequent radio messages, particularly before attacks. This exposed them to interception. During the SC-130 battle alone, 104 HF-DF signals allowed Allied forces to pinpoint their positions. Third, the Kriegsmarine had almost no effective air support. Dönitz demanded help from Hermann Göring's Luftwaffe, but Göring refused to divert aircraft away from his own priorities. The growing number of U-boats didn't translate into greater success, though their presence still alarmed the Allies. By April 1943, the average tonnage sunk per U-boat had dropped to 2,000 tons. It was interesting as a score, but the number of subs had grown so much that it meant little. When Daniel Boone, who once shot 50 bears a year, was replaced by 50 hunters taking 1 each, the bears hardly noticed the decline in aim. Van der Vaart 316. Performance and experience declined sharply. In 1940, a typical U-boat commander had 2 years of experience. By 1943, only 8 months. Many of those killed in May had completed just 1 or 2 patrols. In 1940, only 2% of commanders accounted for 30% of sinkings, the so-called aces, all recruited before 1935. By 1943, nearly all veterans were gone. Around 850 submarines, 3/4 of those built, would never hit an Allied ship. In November 1940, the average daily sinking per boat was 430 tons. By January 1943, it had fallen to 65. From 1939 to early 1943, the Atlantic was Germany's only sustained offensive front, but now even there they were forced into retreat. Dönitz's withdrawal wasn't meant to be final. He rushed new U-boat designs and reverted to smaller group tactics, yet the wolf packs never regained power. The Atlantic instead became the supply lifeline for the Allied invasion of Europe. 2 years after Black May, Admiral Dönitz would become head of state and supreme, commander of the German armed forces, following Hitler and Goebbels' suicides in the Reich Chancellery bunker as Soviet troops entered central Berlin. If you want to see how that final battle unfolded, check out 16 Days in Berlin, our most detailed documentary, covering the fighting day by day across 18 episodes and 412 hours, featuring maps, animations, original footage, and expert commentary from David Willey and Ian from Forgotten Weapons. We couldn't publish this uncensored depiction of World War II's last days on YouTube. It would be demonetized instantly. Instead, you can watch it on Nebula, our streaming platform built with fellow creators, free from ad restrictions. Visit Nebula TV Real-Time History to subscribe for just $30 a year. Gain access to 16 Days in Berlin, Rhineland 45, Red Adams, and all our other documentaries early and ad-free. You'll also get access to original series and creator-led classes, including our behind-the-scenes. Look at how a real-time history episode is produced. Find all sources for this episode in the description below. If you're watching on Nebula or Patreon, thank you for supporting our work. And if you'd like to see more about how the Atlantic War shaped the battles of Tunisia and Sicily, check out those episodes next. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this has been a real-time history production, still vibing to the 1992 techno remix of Das Boot's theme song. Yes, really, and look it up.